Hi everyone, how are you? I reviewed a video from the Deception Detective recently, and so he has just done another video on the Watts case, and so I have people asking me my opinion on it. And as it's very clear that on many things, me and the deception detective would be on opposite sides. I'm comfortable with that, as I'm sure he is too, as he is an attorney. So, well, I am taking the very, very unpopular position of I'm not defending Christopher Watts in the unthinkable event if he had any part to do with it. And I will even get attacked for saying if right there. There is a huge and very, very vocal group online that does not believe that more than one thing can be true at once. And they have very black and white thinking. And that is not conducive to what would have happened in a court of law should Christopher Watts have been put in the position of going on trial. And if he was on trial, he would have been charged with the death penalty. So he would have had death penalty qualified attorneys. Those are attorneys who are essentially at the top of their game, that they are very much putting the hands of somebody else's lives in their own hands. They're being entrusted with somebody else's life. Now, I am not convinced that the way that Christopher Watts recalls the events is anything that could have been proven in a court of law with death penalty qualified attorneys. I do not believe that, number one, he did it alone. Number one, that he did it of a sound mind, body, and soul. Number three, that he did it without any type of influence. I believe that he could have even put in a plea of guilty by reason of mental defect if he had the proper counsel, if he had the opportunity to be listened to be evaluated, to be understood, because it is my position, looking at the case for the more than 1,000 hours that I have documented in, and there's probably more than 1,000 by far, I believe that there was a substance that was being imbibed by Christopher Watts in the products that were being sold by his wife that are questionable in nature, in that they were not allowing Christopher Watts to sleep, that it was a known fact, and it was a laughable fact in these interviews that he had not slept in months, that he was losing weight without trying, etc., etc. That puts up a strong argument that there's something in that product that was of a stimulant in nature, and going long term without sleep can cause hallucinations, can cause irrational behavior, a number of things. He had went reportedly for months with 2 to 3 hours of sleep in some reports. He claims that there were demons in the room with him when the event happened, that they were behind him. That points to me to hallucinations. If we're going to take what he says in a confession or a quasi-confession, it's not fair to take only what you want to hear then and say, okay, you said this, let's put you in this category, when there were many things that he said. If in fact we take what from that series of small quasi confessions, and do not properly evaluate whether or not demons exist. Who were the demons? What did he see that he thought were demons? Are demons symbolic, or are they other people that he's implying were involved? And that is where we get into, is he really the only one that should be behind bars? I am not ruling out that he did it. I am not ruling in that he did it. I am looking at the bigger picture because I do not believe that a proper and thorough investigation was ever conducted. I do believe that there are people out there that have a lot more information, and I do believe that that has not ever been fully investigated. That does not make me a person who is blaming the dead. That does not make me a person who is saying something about somebody so that they cannot rest in peace. I am, however, evaluating the behavior that led to the unthinkable, the behavior that led to so many micro events happening that a major event occurred, and whether or not she or he is to blame for either. There were adults in children's lives that were not acting in a manner conducive to letting children be loved, taught to appreciate and bond and know that their parents are going to be there if they need them. Those little girls were locked up for 15 hours out of a 24-hour day. And that was bragged about by the mother, and that was laughed about by people. That is not acceptable. That was causing serious delays in the development and health of those little girls. These are the reasons in which I speak. Lies and greed led to what happened. And the lies and greed that are continuing to go on to push a narrative are problematic. These videos are continuing to be put up, and many, many people are profiting from them. I am not monetized. I am not profiting. I speak because I believe that the truth has an important role in our society. And if what happened to Christopher Watts could happen, then it could happen to any of us. And we have a higher duty than to go and put up the pitchforks and put somebody away without proper evaluation of the truth and the facts. So many people try to shut my channel down. So many people threaten me. Most of the channels who have spoken like me have been taken down, and often by themselves, because the threats and intimidation are very difficult to handle. I do not believe that I'm the only one who should be asking these questions. I believe that the family on both sides of the family should be asking the very questions that I ask. And people want to villainize one side of this tragedy. And that goes to that black and white line of thinking that is not helping anybody. It is not helping anybody to further a narrative that continues to give money. Money and greed do not lead to the truth and ultimately closure. Will there ever be closure in this case to the loved ones? Absolutely not. But can there be an area where it's closer to comfort than what there is right now, while there's all of this fighting and talk of lawsuits that would never be approved in any court of law? That I am not breaking any laws whatsoever, and there is nothing that is going to happen to me by continuing to evaluate the behavior that I observe from the videos that are continually purported with a narrative that is not true, based on the truth and the facts that we know were truly going on. That being said, under the fair use and... Oh, where is my fair use? There it is. Hold on. Nope. Under the Fair Use Act of 1976, I have to do this by memory, I am going to do a video using parts of, as Deception Detective said, this came originally from WTO, my little friend Kelly over there. Hello, shout out. Thank you for doing such a good job of getting these interviews and putting the points out on them. If anybody has not listened to Kelly at What's the Obsession, please do. She's amazing. She has, her background is in evaluating human behavior, and she is absolutely amazing. She is patient. She is genuine. She is authentic. Her and I talked about the Baby Wise thing, as Baby Wise was thrown around a lot in here, in that Shanann had said that that was where she had learned the parenting techniques in which she was inflicting in her home. And so Baby Wise was getting quite the rap in this, and I went out and bought the editions of Baby Wise that would have been seen by Shanann at that time, and at the same time I was doing that, Kelly was doing that. So we both kind of had a moment where we were on the same wavelength, and so we discussed it, and we both came to the same conclusion, reading the Baby Wise book, that there is no way, shape, or form that Shanann read that book. That book does, in fact, have a place for certain people who want to put in some structure and schedule with a newborn when they're maybe intimidated and have not really been around any type of child rearing, if you will. It gives you some ideas in making sure that baby is fed and baby sleeps, that to kind of push the limits of the breastfeeding, so that it's very much centered towards breastfeeding, in that making sure that, you know, you're not giving baby just a little sip and then baby sleeps for 2 minutes and then a sip in 2 minutes, because you'll go crazy if you're feeding your baby every 2 minutes. They're saying, hey, you know, push the amount that the baby's going to eat so that the baby sleeps, so that you can get rest. It's formatted in that type of thinking. Shanann had misinterpreted the concept very much, in that she believed that the book gave her a way of having a more structured life in how the baby needed to come home from the hospital. As she stated, that she started this routine of sleep training towards Cece from day one, even in the hospital. And that's certainly not the way that I parented, or many people would. As stated, to have, Bella was entering kindergarten, to have expected her to be isolated from other children, to sleep 15 hours out of a 24-hour day is not what anybody should have ever done. That includes that 12-hour isolation period and a 3-hour isolation period, that the girls were not allowed to be with each other, that the bathroom between them was closed, locked, and the water taken out of the bathroom between. So there were no toilet privileges, eating, drinking, anything like that. And that's where we see some of the problematic behavior that we see with Cece eating her own excrement and the dog's. These are very problematic behaviors that, as you go into the rabbit hole of what was the Watts, these videos that were made to, I don't even know. I don't even know at some point what the point was, but they were used to facilitate this, that, this is so cute that the kids are doing this, and then that this is how she has a life outside of the children. It didn't put the children's needs first. And that's what I believe you're supposed to do as a parent. And I have a problem with people who really don't. I believe there is a way to have a balance, but to put them so far back, it's not acceptable to me. It will never be acceptable to me. And when I see that behavior, and I see people trying to model and promote this behavior, so that to the effect that people are saying they want to be just like her, and they are taking the ideas in which she facilitated and saying that they are correct, that the children had the behavior problems that she needed to rectify them. And as somebody just wrote on my thing that, yeah, those girls were spoiled and they deserve to be hit and smacked. And yes, that is part of discipline. And that's what they needed because of the way they were acting. That is not okay. That is not acceptable. And as I say, I will continue to speak out when I see these behaviors being promoted. As such, fair use, fair use. Fair use. The Fair Use Act and disclaimer of Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, where allowance is made for the fair use in the Four-Factor Balancing Act, where a small portion of the original material will be used, that new work is critique, satire, or education, and that the commercial value of the original is not diminished, and that new work is predominantly the original product of the user. I sourced that out by the emerging ed tech and terminally. And so the credit, of course, goes to Deception Detective. I really like learning from him, even though we are on different sides of an argument in this particular case. And as I've said, Watts the Obsession is great. If you want to catch up on those videos in a way that shows the videos for what they are, and they're well placed and organized well, please sub up to Neeks Peaks, Neeks Peeks, and I'm talking about WTO, Watts the Obsession, and Deception Detective. So please go to all of them for the originals, and this is just simply my viewpoint, as we know is not popular. But there are, 3,000 of us that actually see things the way that they are, and we come from a place where it's good that other people don't understand the abuse in the way that we have. Ow, ow, ow. Sorry, my cat sees that I'm sitting here and he needs a treat. Without further ado, let's get into this, and I will give Boo his stick.
Of course not. Do they know that? Of course they do. But they're making Chris feel comfortable enough to open up and take ownership of his role in the affair and its fallout. And he's resisting doing it. And the next time I pause, I'm going to point out what I think that means as far as our analysis of him as a psychopath, or as a bumbling, innocent victim fall guy, or as a third topic, something different than a psycho or a fall guy. Is Chris Watts a psychopathic killer, a manipulated fall guy, or something else? I'm Deception Detective, an attorney trained in statement analysis. This channel exposes lies and manipulation. Today we're going to analyze a rare Chris Watts interview to determine if he is a psychopathic killer, a manipulated fall guy, or something else entirely. If you've seen my Nicole Kessinger playlist, my conclusion might surprise you. And for reference, this interview is from 2019 and was uploaded with newly cleaned up audio by a friend of the channel, Watts the Obsession. Her link is in the description. And if you want to help decide who we analyze next on the channel, let's get this video to 50,000 views, which is why I'm continuing this series. Or you can become a channel member and decide who we cover next in one of my channel member community polls. Without further ado, let's listen. Since the point of this analysis is how to spot a psychopath, we're going to start at the part of this interview where Chris is talking about Nicole, because I've already analyzed Nicole. Now I want to analyze Chris, and we can determine if he is a manipulator and psychopath himself, or if he was the victim of Nicole Kessinger, who manipulated him to kill his family to be with her and then take the fall for her, as some people speculate in my comments. So Watts the Obsession has conveniently put timestamps here, and we're going to jump to timestamp 1510, where she's labeled Mistress Nicole Kessinger, when, how we met.
And there we go. Deception Detective put everything together beautifully. And we both agree that Kelly is awesome. And look at how she's detailed out all of this. She's so awesome. And she puts the time and effort in. And she has been doing such great work for years, to the point that if this were to ever come to a trial, I would say that Kelly would be brought up as a subject matter expert, as would the Deception Detective here, and he would be in there analyzing statements which are important. Again, we are looking at is Chris Watts this bumbling idiot? Or is he this criminal mastermind who did the unthinkable in what I believe too short of a time frame to have done that? I don't believe that it could have happened the way that we are supposed to think that it did. But you know what? Other people do.
We're going to listen from there.
There may have been others. So Nicole was the only one? I was the only one. Was there ever like a one-night stand with someone else just out of the blue and one and done? Oh, okay. All right. Want to talk a little bit more about Nicole? And so walk me through it, because that was one of the things we never really got to ask about.
Right. We didn't talk.
Kind of skipped on it. Talked about where the girls were, but so what happened there?
Don't just use the internet, unleash it. Quantum fiber internet sets
Well, since
you free
I'm not
like never
monetized,
before.
I don't want these
Unleash
commercials.
the way you
So it was probably around June 1st or something. That's when I first met her. And it was just like a work conversation. She messed with the gas meters that, were out in the field. And I was messing up. And then, I took it to her like, hey, what's going on with this? Like, I want to fix it. After that, we just ran into each other a few times in the office. And I think it was probably the 4th time meeting.
Ew, her shirt says hips, lips, and what? Ew. I don't know. Off the subject, I don't know enough about the Nicole Kessinger aspect to determine whether or not I think she was involved. To this point, I have seen that she talks about the future with Chris, and I believe that there are aspects in which she would not have understood, as I explained the last time in some of the awkwardness of the conversation points. She was full of herself. And this hips, lips, and what? Hips, lips, and I don't know. The girl is confident. Gotta give her that.
She had asked me, because like when we were talking back and forth, I would say, like we moved here from Colorado or from North Carolina and stuff like that. And then she was like, "What's all this weed stuff?" Become like, I took up my phone and showed her a picture. Like, my girl's on the phone. It's like, "Oh, okay." Like, so, like, yeah, like, I didn't wear a ring at work because like I something else to get refitted after I lost all that weight. So, but
You lost so much weight that your fingers lost weight?
yeah, it was literally like I was out in the snow one time. I went like that. Ring went off on the rocks. So.
Ever since I started analyzing Nicole Kessinger 4 months ago, I've seen lots of comments of people suggesting that Chris was either pushed to commit the murders by Nicole manipulating him, or even by Shanann's needling and belittling him. And over in the DD forum, someone actually mentioned a lot of theories about this to me, which I addressed over there in the forum. And my main question was, where do these theories come from? Because as far as I'm concerned, Chris Watts committed these murders alone, and any manipulation or needling of him was done without the expectation that he would go all out and murder his entire family. All that is to say, I think that Chris originated all these theories about how other people might have contributed to the murders, because he's clearly skilled at blame shifting. For instance, he's been minimizing his courtship of Nicole with the word just. I just did this, I just did that, and so on. And manipulators often use minimizing adverbs like just and merely to downplay incriminating context. This is so common of manipulators, it's even a card in my deception deck, my 52 favorite rules for spotting lies and manipulation. So does Chris's manipulativeness mean that he's a psychopath? Not necessarily. We need to keep listening before we draw any conclusions about how we should approach him and whether or not we should approach our analysis of him as a psychopath. For now, when I hit play, just pay attention to how he minimizes his own responsibility for the affair with his word choice, where he's constantly painting himself as a aw shucks victim of Nicole's relentless advances.
From North Carolina and stuff like that.
There's many different things here, and as stated, more than one thing can be true at once. And I think that at times the bigger picture is not seen here, and the bigger picture is relevant. I will explain more on that later. The one thing that has never sat well with me is when he claims that he met her that June 1 day. There is evidence that there was a possibility of Chris introducing Nicole to his family the 4th of July, the year prior, at a 4th of July celebration. There are possible, I am not convinced entirely, Google searches of Nicole Kessinger Googling Shanann Watts in that year prior. That goes to your point, Deception Detective, of him lying and being deceptive here. I don't know if or why he would lie about that. If their meeting was casual the year prior and they got more serious this June 1, I'm not sure. There's some interesting outliers there with that.
And then she's like, "What's all this weed stuff?" I'm like, "God," took out my phone and showed her a picture. Like, my girl's on the phone. It's like, "Oh, okay." Like, so, like, yeah, like, I didn't wear a ring at work because like I sent it off so I get ring.
And for your pleasure, so that you all don't forget, when Nicole saw those pictures of him and his family, let's all do it together now. Let's go. Oh, he's a dad. Oh, he's a dad. There you go. Couldn't help myself. At least I'm not doing the and like. Hey, Deception Detective, what do all of the likes mean? When maybe you've addressed that and I haven't seen it, but when Nicole does all of the like and like Valley Girl like and like oh my God, like what is all the like about?
Pretty much, I lost all that weight. So, but
You lost so much weight that your fingers lost weight?
yeah, it was literally like I was out in the snow one time. I went like that. Ring went off on the rocks. So I was panicking trying to find a leg camera to send one. But
this weight loss is one of the problems that I have now with that MLM product that she had bought with the money that was supposed to be used for the mortgage, and that's a whole different situation. But she was giving Christopher double the amount of a duo burner. So it was already like supposed to be something that was on each side of your body going, but she doubled it up because it seemed to her that he was not like operating to capacity, so she sped him up. Now, it is rumored that what was in that MLM product was taken off of the market when the unthinkable occurred and reformulated. I cannot find that to be true or based in anything that I can say, okay, on this date, this was here or not. And I really wish that I could. We know that there's a lot of caffeine in it, but what else is so stimulating that would cause all of this weight loss and sleep deprivation in a normal-sized, otherwise healthy male? I wish that there would have been some reasoning to have taken his blood, to have seen what was in him. If there was other substances in that, what if he was reacting differently to the increased level of caffeine or whatever was in there? It is also common knowledge that Nicole was giving him some type of a wellness tea or something. There's speculation in that as well. Some people are very sensitive to chemicals, and with Christopher being a well, let's say narcotic naive, a body that had not had alcohol, drugs of any kind, a very, very, he was a well and clean person. So what were these substances doing to him? And what was the long-term sleep deprivation doing? Was he becoming psychotic? Was he having hallucinations? Was that as a result of the sleep deprivation from the chemicals in him? Would these chemicals affect an otherwise normal and healthy individual in the same way? Were other people doubling up? We don't have anything to say, okay, this many people did this and this many people did not do this. At some point in the discovery, an investigator did ask one of Shanann's friends for a sample of this product to evaluate. I have not seen the evaluation of that product. I've not seen how they broke it down chemically, and it is stated that what she provided was well past the date and time of what he would have been taking.
So after that, she left me alone for a couple days. And she texted me outside the field. And then after that, we just kept texting back and forth. And it was just, like she used to work in a little rig out in.
Right, so he has an excuse for everything. He showed her the photo of his family. The ball was in her court to do something wrong. He had an excuse for not wearing his wedding ring. She left him alone for a couple days.
North Dakota, I think. And we just kind of trading stories back and forth about what we did and everything. And then one day it just kind of went to a different level. And then I never thought it would ever go to that level. But she was talking about meeting up after we got back from San Diego. San Diego from the 22nd to the 26th of June. And we met up after we got back. And
how did you guys meet up?
At a park in Thornton. Thornton somewhere. And after that, we just kept seeing each other pretty much the whole month of July.
So let me ask you this. You tell me if I'm wrong. You strike me as somewhat of a shy person. So when you guys were meeting, was it just kind of very initiatory, like flirting at first? Okay. From both sides?
Yeah. It was just kind of like feeling each other out. It's kind of like, I don't.
Yeah. And
if my analyzation of behavior is so wrong, so criminal, why is it acceptable for these detectives to be asking the same questions about the behavior other than the event? This is called evaluation of behavior. It is a common practice. That is what they are doing, and that is what I am doing.
So, texts, any calls?
More near the end of June.
Okay. And what makes you remember that it's June, that it happened?
Because we called each other before I left to go to San Diego.
Oh, okay. Right. At first, did you think something might happen?
I just thought it was just flirting. I didn't think it was actually like something that would actually happen.
Yeah. Well, it's totally natural, right? I mean, everyone kind of flirts.
If we go to this point, and he's saying that, basically the first time they talked, it was around the water coolers, and he was showing pictures of his children and wife. How is it that she could have ever said she didn't know that he was married?
The word, right? Because relationship between men and women is different. So if you're working with a girl at work, it's just kind of natural to flirt.
I wish I was on the field more.
If you've seen my previous videos in this series analyzing Nicole Kessinger, you'll know that I think the interviewer who interviewed her did a terrible job. For example, he fed her answers. And he even did something which I used as the preview clip for my video, How to Expose a Manipulator, because it was so egregious. He actually mocked her for being too talkative, which is the exact opposite of what an interviewer should do.
Like, so much.
You like to talk, I can tell a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
400 when she was young. She'd crank out about 400 words a minute, gusts up to 600. A little thinking yak, man.
You're a talker, so I'm... By contrast, the officers interviewing Chris Watts here are using much better technique. Does everybody flirt at work? Of course not. Do they know that? Of course they do. But they're making Chris feel comfortable enough to open up and take ownership of his role in the affair and its fallout. And that's why this interview is so illuminating, because they're giving him the opportunity to take responsibility, even one iota of responsibility for what happened, and he's resisting doing it. And the next time I pause, I'm going to point out what I think that means as far as our analysis of him as a psychopath or as a bumbling innocent victim fall guy, or as a third topic, something different than a psycho or a fall guy.
That's totally natural, right? I mean, everyone kind of flirts at work, right? Because relationship between men and women is different. So if you're working with a girl at work, it's just kind of natural to flirt.
I wish I was out in the field more, so in the office, those yeah.
So even there, he wishes he was out in the field more. Whatever happened isn't his fault. He's just a victim of circumstance. If he'd been out in the field more, he wouldn't have fallen victim to the circumstances of Nicole pursuing him.
I don't see it that way. I see it just as him saying the way that things were. In that, I believe from the bigger picture that he is rather simple in the way that he had experience with or didn't have experience with women. I don't see that part as deceptive. And let's get rid of this ad here.
The producers of Vanderpump Rules. Welcome to the Valley.
This is adult stuff.
Our priorities have changed. I'm 40 now.
I don't know how to manage raising a...
Oh my God, Kristen's 40.
That's kind of where the path started, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if I was like, because when I went from like a rover to a field coordinator, like I would spend more time in the morning time in the office trying to get everything like situated where we're going to go, everything like that. You know, if I was a rover, I'd be more out in the field and instead of like going to the office like for more than an hour.
Right.
It just gave me more time to run into her, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. What did she know about you? Did she know you were married first?
She did, once I showed her the pictures on the phone. Yeah, like, you know, the home screen picture.
So was your wife in that picture, or was it just your phone?
It was just my girls right there, but my wife was the lock screen.
Oh.
So she knew I was married, my kids. Yeah.
Are you aware that she said she didn't know you were married?
Yeah,
what did you think about that?
I figured it was like, just trying to save face, trying to, you know, I was just trying to, and some of my sister said it was like, just trying to keep things together.
Yeah.
Just trying, she phrased it a different way, but just kind of like,
Rusty Johnson's. Okay, what is going on with these t-shirts? Anybody ever look at those before? And Kelly, if you put together this photo montage, you did a beautiful job. Once again, thank you for the work that you do. It is so appreciated in the community. You do such a great job.
It's like ground control, is trying to control everything that's going on around her, I'm sure.
Okay, so Nicole knew her angles. She really practiced how to pose. There's a lot in posing when you are in bodybuilding, and this is not a natural or coincidental pose. She is purposely putting weight on that leg while pushing this one out to focus, arching her back and whatnot. So, and then giving those bedroom eyes, just saying that this chick knows what she's doing to look good in a picture with her body. She knows where her assets are. I'm just saying.
She got bombarded by all kinds of different sides from the media and everything. So,
Have you talked to her at all? No.
I'm hoping she hasn't, like, you know, written me in a different alias or something. No, I'm not talking to them.
Oh, hips, lips, and hot rods. What a gal.
Wait.
Oh.
And are you not allowed to talk to her?
I would hope not.
Okay. No one told you that then?
No, I mean, I would expect like, I thought like in Colorado it said like on the DOC list, if you're on like a victim list, you can't call anybody. But here, I'm not sure if that's the same, but I just talked to my sister, parents, some friends of my parents. Okay.
Do you wish you could talk to her?
Maybe once just to
get some closure?
Just to say like, hey, just once.
Yeah.
Say like, I'm sorry this all happened. I'm sorry. I'm not sure like what happened like afterward.
I'm sorry this all happened. I'm not quite sure what happened. Even in a hypothetical apology to Nicole, Chris cannot bring himself to take any responsibility for anything, whether it's the courtship and the affair, or the murder, or even the fallout that resulted from the murder. And it's this lack of remorse and self-centeredness that convinces me Chris is a psychopath. And now that we're convinced, or at least I am, that he's a psychopath, the next step in our analysis is to determine which type of psychopath he is. Because
now, here is a problem to me. What if he honestly doesn't know what happened? What if he honestly... Deception detective, you know what it's like when people experience something traumatic. Their brain turns off and sees things differently. Whatever happened that morning, in the way that he describes it, if he snapped, if we go down that road, if he snapped and he was out of his tree, if he was psychotic, if he snapped like a rabid animal, I don't know that he can put that back into a thought sequence in which he can recall the events. And I do think that that affects some of what he's saying, whether or not he was alone, whether or not it happened in the way that it did. I think that it would have been better if professionals took the time to work with him, even if it meant that he was, I don't want to say, fully put under or hypnotized. I mean, that's certainly a way with a trained psychoanalyst to work with him to understand and evaluate what happened so that he's more comfortable with it, because the demons standing there bother me. That part of what he says makes me want to understand what he's saying. The difficulty is that what he said when he said it wasn't challenged. It seems to me that he has a very avoidant way, a very avoidant type personality where he would avoid confrontation no matter what, to the extent here that he was willing to accept the world's worst plea deal, in that he accepted a plea in which they said they were not going to pursue charges for the unborn baby, but they did in the counts in which he is charged. He couldn't have done worse in a trial. And accepting the life without the possibility of parole to supposedly avoid the death penalty, as her parents were deeply spiritual people who didn't want that right there is easy to disprove. The death penalty was rarely enacted in full in Colorado and is taken off of the table now. The death penalty isn't on the table in Colorado anymore. And so when he was sentenced, it was probably on its way out. So the likelihood of him being executed within a certain time frame where he could have appealed if he wanted to was there. Nobody took the time to work with him psychologically to see what happened. And I believe that to the victims who have passed and the victims who are still here, which means both sides of the families, they deserve the truth of what happened. And it's not there. The fact that the two detectives are there having this interview with him after the event, sitting there chatting with him like he's an old friend, laughing and cajoling him. Why? If they believe in their heads and their hearts that he did what he is sentenced to have done, what kind of detective who was involved in any capacity would be able to share a laugh or be lighthearted with somebody who they truly think did this alone, of sound mind and body and soul? I don't believe that Shanann's father could have been as calm as he was when he went to have Christopher sign over power of attorney if he truly believed that it occurred like it did. It seems to me there are a lot of people who are comfortable with what is unspoken, and the unspoken is what intrigues me. Now, to say here in the Tells of a Psychopath, the 4 tells of a bold psychopath is convincing face and body language, the duper's delight, bold stories, but lack of emotion and relationship skills, the struggle to face. And the 4 tells of a calculating psychopath excels at evasion and distraction, excels at information treatment, and excessive narcissistic words, and I, me, and my, and the below average IQ. I believe that you did choose the latter, and I will speak on that in a moment. If we go to this checklist and we go to another consideration that is popular in some not so much, is, I believe, in my maybe unpopular opinion, I believe that he is undiagnosed as being on the spectrum, and in so there are a lot of adults who were not diagnosed as being on the spectrum of autism and were kind of cheated in their learning experience, as that they were seen as just different, odd, having a learning disability, etc., etc. I believe that if Christopher Watts was going to school at a different time, he would have been identified as being on the spectrum and maybe seen a little bit different, or had a different way of looking at his education in a way to optimize his potential. If we take that it could be true that he is on the spectrum and has autism, that would also explain some of the difficulties in the face-to-face, the body language, the eye contact, what is seen as duper's delight, and the lack of emotion and relation. That would all be classically understood as being a part of being on the spectrum. Well, he was on the porch and he was rocking back and forth. People say, that they knew he was guilty then and he was rocking back and forth. I see that as a stimming behavior in that is popular for those on the spectrum. I see that more of the body language as something rather than being deceptive in that.
Because when it comes to detecting lies, psychopaths are extremely adept at fooling people. They can be very convincing, and they can play the victim card very well. So if you've seen my videos, how to catch a psychopath or how to spot a psychopath, you're probably all already familiar with these. But I like to put lying psychopaths into 2 buckets. bold psychopaths and calculating psychopaths. And once we determine which one Chris is, we'll be able to be even more nuanced in protecting ourselves against his manipulations. All that said, big caveat, I am not a clinician, so I cannot diagnose a psychopath. The behavior panel have pointed out on one of my videos, they don't agree with my psychopath checklist. Personally, I think my checklist is useful for spotting a psychopath so that you can guard yourself against the way they lie. Remember, the point of my channel is to help you spot lies and manipulation. Not to be a therapist or cure these people. My advice has always been, whether we're analyzing psychopaths or addicts or sadists, is if you recognize the signs, just get them out of your life. So when I hit play, ask yourself, is Chris a big and bold storyteller like Casey Anthony or O.J. Simpson? Or is he more calculating like Jada Pinkett Smith or Stephen Stearns or Jody Hildebrand?
Through like, if you have like counseling, if you're like, you know, different state, if you had to leave everything behind, I just wanted to show I'm sorry that something was not probably happening or happening to somebody else to do.
Would you be alright if we told her that?
Are you looking for an easy way to view
like I
and
say,
manage your
I
mail
am
and
not
packages
monetized,
from
so why are
anywhere,
these ads
24/7?
here?
Well, at iPostal One.
That's fine. Do you want us to? Do you want us not to?
And if she would want to even get this thing, I'm not sure if someone comes up. I'm sure she'd answer your question.
Why are they offering to be a vessel of communication to Nicole Kessinger for him? Like what they're playing Cupid, and it's just, like I say, if they believe that he's this cold-blooded psycho that did this and did this alone, why are they being so nice and buddies? And oh, you want me to go and tell her for you? I don't like the kid gloves that were handled with Nicole Kessinger and her father, because daddy said not to do this and that. They didn't, and they certainly didn't question Jim, you know. And I mean, there's a lot of people who say, were those the demons behind? Who knows? I mean, was it symbolic, or was it the ideas that were put in his head? I don't know. But you cannot take and say, he said he did it, without saying he said there were two demons behind him. He said that she did the unthinkable first, and then he just like a good boy cleaned up. And you know, there are so many different things, and I think that Christopher Watts is worth evaluating by professionals, and to see really why he is more comfortable in prison than he was at home, and why the behaviors that he was watching of the way that the girls were being mistreated was something that he didn't stand up for. I had a comment that somebody said Chris needed to just sit Shannon down and say, you know what? We can't afford this daycare anymore, and you need to get a job, and you need to do this. If for a second anybody thought that Christopher Watts could have done that, we would not be having this conversation today. The pattern in their marriage, and it's not just that she was naggy or whatnot. In my opinion, there was a long-standing pattern of her behavior that had hurt others and had a lot of symbolic undertones into how he was before her and how she was before him. And would he have continued on the same platform if he would have never met her? If he would have never met her, would he be living out his life in prison? If she would have never met him, would she be alive? I'm going to leave that right there.
Phone call more than the attorney phone call that she didn't want to go answer. Yeah.
Oh, so your attorney tried to call her and she wouldn't answer?
Yeah, because I remember her phone number, but after that they figured out, I guess, where she lived, and they left a call business card there. that she just pretty much after like the 5th attempt, she said stop. I don't know.
The 5th attempt, they attempted to get a hold of Nicole Kessinger 5 times. And she did not contact them. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's getting bombarded like everyone else, so.
Hopefully it's calmed down since, but I'm sure, like, I just hope she can, I'm like, there's like normalcy for her, not since she's on the outside, but I'm hoping it can get that way at some point. I'm not sure if she had to leave Colorado or not, but I'm surely that would.
A psychopath, a true psychopath, does not have empathy. The fact that he's wondering how she's feeling, although it may be infuriating to so many because she is the other woman, looking at the behavior, that signifies that he has empathy. When Shanann said that the girls needed to be in bed and from that 12 to 12, and they were in their bedrooms with the doors locked from the outside, which is not anything you do because fires happen, anything else. Christopher would go around like a janitor with a ring of keys, and supposedly so would she. Christopher talked about how it bothered him that the girls might be getting hungry. It didn't bother her. He waited till she was asleep, Shanann was asleep, and then he would sometimes sneak in little sandwiches with the girls and give them little sandwiches behind their mom's back in the times when they were locked up for the 12-hour period. That shows me that he had great empathy for the girls in a way in which she didn't. I am not saying that she did it. I am saying that there are more questions than there are answers in who did what and why. But if we're going to say that he's this cold monster, this psychopathic killer, how do you line up these things? How do you line up all of the pictures in which you see him being the hands-on parent? He is the hands-on parent that is engaged and interactive with the girls. The girls go to him. They cling to him. They trust him. There was not one indication that he would have been the one to have done such a heinous crime, to become the family annihilator. There is no history of any violence. There's no psychopath, sociopath triad. When he was 15, he wasn't bedwetting or setting fires or anything like that. Nothing. By all reports, he was good. He kept to himself. He was a good student, a good brother, was on sports. He was a good sportsman. No one had a bad word to say about Chris Watts. The complete opposite goes for her. She had the complicated pattern, the complicated teenage years, may or may not have graduated. There's a lot of speculation there that she did not. Certainly wasn't a good student, sportsman, all of the things that come in that. And the problematic behavior with the jobs and the history that go there. When the pattern of behavior is analyzed, Christopher Watts does not fit a profile of any kind.
It would have been hard if she did.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing Darko wasn't dream job, so that's one thing I always asked my attorneys is did she have to leave? Did she have to do anything at work? Because that was one thing. So she always told me that was her dream job. So,
Oh, really? Yeah. What does she mean?
in the oil company in the Darko was unless you work for BP or company Phillips or something.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And the Darko was
Those big leagues.
yeah.
Right. Can I ask kind of a tough question? Did you love her?
I felt like it was true.
Yeah.
Chris can't definitively say he loved Nicole. Yeah, I think that's true, was the best he could muster up. And that is expected of a psychopath. Psychos do not feel emotions like you and me. And I've been saying this ever since the beginning when I started this series. Before I even analyzed Chris, this is the first time I've analyzed any of Chris's words. Up until now, I've only analyzed Nicole's interviews. But based on what Nicole said and based on the facts around this case, I came to the opinion that Chris didn't kill his family because he loved Nicole. He wanted to be with Nicole, and the quickest, most convenient way to achieve that was simply to kill his family. Divorces are messy, they're time-consuming, and they're expensive. And his wife was pregnant, so even if he divorced her, he'd still have 18 years of child support and potentially alimony to pay. Psychopaths look at the world in terms of people being useful and not useful. And Chris determined that his family was no longer useful. So if you agree with me that Chris is likely a psychopath, or at least close enough to a psychopath that we can analyze him based on my criteria, our next step is to say whether or not he is a bold psychopath or a calculating psycho. So here's the foretells of a bold psycho. And when I say bold psycho, think of someone like O.J. Simpson or Casey Anthony or Amber Heard, who we've analyzed on the channel. They have very convincing face and body language. They can display duper's delight. In other words, the elation of getting away with a lie when any normal person like you or me would likely be too stressed to be all giddy about getting away with a lie. We'd be too focused on pulling off the lie. They tell big, bold stories, but those stories lack emotional and relationship details. And they struggle face to face. So if you have the opportunity to interview one of them, you want to get them to sit down with you so that you can expose them. Which is why I've invited Don Wells for an interview in my Summer Wells series, who declined, as well as Chris Proudfoot in my Sebastian Rogers series, who also has not gotten back to me. But I don't think Chris falls into the bold psychopath category. Instead, I think he falls into the calculating psychopath category, like Candace Wells. And here's the trademarks of a calculating psychopath. They excel at evasion and distraction. So rather than boldly lying to your face, they'll likely try to distract you or go on a tangent so that they can minimize the amount of lying they have to do. They excel at information treatment. In other words, they can tell you the truth and the whole truth, but they can also add more to it that distorts it. Kind of like how Chris was talking about not wearing his wedding ring. I think that was all true, but he made sure to mention that and didn't mention any other circumstances about him flirting with Nicole. In other words, he treated the information to look like a good guy. They use excessive narcissistic words like I, me, and my. And as we've seen here, Chris does appear to be very self-centered, if not totally narcissistic, because I can't diagnose him. And fourth, calculating psychopaths, just like every psychopath, has a below average IQ. So don't let movies like American Psycho fool you. Psychopaths are usually dumber than the average person. As we listen on, look out for Chris evading sensitive topics by distracting the interviewers.
Which is a good point in that once again negates your theory, respectfully, in that Christopher Watts has an above average IQ, in fact. His IQ is reported at 140. So he does not fit in there. Now, a psychopath is a diagnosis no different than narcissism, in which neither you nor I can apply. We can speculate, but Christopher Watts does not have a low IQ. So looking at some of the other considerations in where I think that there's a bigger picture, in that Christopher Watts is on that spectrum, and on that spectrum, the former term for somebody like him would have been that he has Asperger's syndrome, as Asperger's syndrome is not a term that is acceptable due to our culture now because of the connotations with that scientist in which it was named after. We don't call it that anymore, but there are people who still do like to be identified as having Asperger's syndrome because they understand that that puts them in a little bit different of a category and that it is better understood. So I would say that that would be a good example of kind of where he is, in that he had his niche in life, in that, good student, good sportsman, good brother, good son, good employee. He excelled and did everything right in his graduate program. His parents put him through the NASCAR mechanics program. He loved cars. He loved working on cars. And his parents put together the money that they had to put him through there. And he loved it. And he did great. He loved working on cars. That's where his focus was. And I think that could very well fit being in the spectrum. And that's where some of his mannerisms are misunderstood. But that would give him that higher IQ, which is not in that example where you bring of having that. Now, that IQ was reported when he was evaluated to see what type of a prisoner he would be. As you know, being an attorney, the offender is evaluated to see where placement would be best. It is rumored that he was given the plea deal in saying, it was said that he was promised to get into a prison closer to his parents if he took this plea. Now, putting him in Dodge County Correctional Facility in the way backwoods of Wisconsin is not closer to his family in where a prison in Colorado would be, that you have to take a plane to, I believe Madison in Wisconsin. And then you have to rent a car and drive 2 to 3 hours up there. It would be easier access to get to a prison in Colorado. It is rumored that he couldn't be in Colorado because he would have been too high value of a prisoner, that people would have wanted to end his life. I don't know if that's true or not. But in the evaluation for him, where they determine probably his overall function as GAF and everything like that, they did the IQ test, and they did not say that then he was also diagnosed with anything. Does that allude to the fact that they gave him evaluations and he did not place on any of the scales that would indicate that he is a psychopath, that he has certain personality disorders or anything like that? Is that included when they do a prisoner evaluation? I'm sure you would know, but it is information that can be verified that he is having an IQ of 140. And so that kind of throws that theory out of the water. I do apologize that we don't agree on that.
Also look out for him telling totally true stories, but treating the information in order to paint everything in a certain light. And as we've seen so far, he likes to paint himself in the light of a victim, an aw shucks everyman who's always at the mercy of these conniving and bullying women. Finally, look out for his narcissism, especially in his use of narcissistic words. Remember, even though he's expressed no remorse for it, his little daughters and his wife are all dead.
Can I ask kind of a tough question? Did you love her?
I felt like it was true.
Yeah. I think so too. I think it was the same from her. Okay. Tell us about the time you spent with her.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded this car.
Again, I'm not monetized.
Okay, you ready?
So...
All right, 118.
Well, I mean, it felt like it was, I think, like when you said, like more like a shy guy, it's kind of like I've never like been pursued by anybody before. It's kind of like I was the one, trying to pursue. Because like when me and Shanann met, it was like, she was always like pushing me away, kind of like,
She was sick for a while, right?
oh yeah, she had just got diagnosed with lupus, and she was on like a bunch of different medication and stuff, and it was like, I guess I wasn't her type.
And you weren't her type?
I wasn't her type, because like she told me like when she first, because we had met.
She told you that?
Yeah.
You're not.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, it was like, when we first met, like, it was at a movie theater. My cousin's ex-wife set us up.
You were dressed like shit, weren't you?
I didn't.
That's what you told me.
Yeah, I didn't know like that.
This will always bother me. Those detectives sitting there laughing like that. Again, if they thought that he was capable of what they were a party of putting him away for, would they have sat there and laughed like their old school friends? That's problematic to me. Why is this laughable? Why are our tax dollars being spent on having them go to rural Wisconsin a couple of years later, after he's convicted of what he pled guilty to, sitting there in Dodge County Correctional Facility, and our tax dollars go and put 2 federal agents, give them flight money to drive up to go and interview him, of which we don't see we don't see the interview. We don't see his mouth moving with the words. We don't know what was clipped out. We don't know how all of the questions went. We don't know what was fully said in that interview or any interview, quite frankly. But to sit there and have our tax dollars go to this. Well, it is rumored that those 2 detectives couldn't continue in their job because they were so traumatized. Well, what are they doing going and out there and laughing with him if they really think that he did this and did this as is what they are saying? It doesn't make sense. And they want to be like setting up a high school crush, like, oh, I think she likes you too. I think she loves you too. I don't like it. I don't like how the Tamburglar, swooped in after Ronnie Watts said, shouldn't we get one of them lawyers or something? And they made sure that Chris and his dad didn't have the opportunity to get one of them lawyers or anything, because then the Tamburglar started massaging Christopher in a very, very sensual way. So much so that if I were a female offender and the detectives were trying to get me to talk, and a male detective started massaging me in that way, in a sensual way, that would be called out, and anything said within that interview would be taken out. Why is it okay for so many of the things that have went on here to be a double standard? Looking at the full picture. And the full picture, because I believe the narrative as it was in the beginning too. I believe that Christopher was a narcissistic ass who had an affair. But as I looked and as I found lie after lie after lie, and it wasn't on the part of Chris, I looked at the bigger picture. And while it seemed that he was the narcissist, there's a bigger picture that he is not the narcissist. She was the narcissist. And he is displaying narcissistic traits, which happens when you are in a relationship long-term in which you are the victim of a narcissist. You develop those same traits for survival to make each day go without conflict. And that's what he did. And so on the surface, to the people who have not spent thousands of hours evaluating all of the behavior and looking into it, you don't see what is there to be seen. It would take trained investigators, trained psychoanalysts, trained psychologists to get together and battle this out. and look at what is truly going on. And it's okay for me to have a different opinion than the deception detective. It's okay, because even in court, you have the defendant and you have the plaintiff and you have the lawyers sit there and fight it out, and they bring in experts and they bring in testimony and they bring in facts and data, and even data can be interpreted in 2 different ways or even more based on what the experts can show you. And it becomes a matter of looking at what makes the most sense with many different scenarios to put together what is the truth or the closest thing to the truth. And I don't think that we're anywhere near close to finding out the truth of what happened that night. That should bother every single person in America, because we have a process with our criminal justice system that fights so that, yes, the occasional guilty person gets out, but that is to ensure that innocent people are not put behind bars. And there are innocent people behind bars. I am not saying that Christopher Watts is innocent. I am saying that he may be guilty by reason of. Guilty, but. And it's those buts that we need to look at. And no longer her butt. No longer NK's butt. I'm sick of looking at NK's butt.
Have any games?
So she was fancy. She was in like shorts and tennis shoes or something, right?
I should know the doorman, was in a suit. I was just like, this isn't good.
Like when you're at the theater?
It was a fancy theater, right?
It was in Charlotte. It was called the Epicenter. Apparently, they give you like champagne and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, this is a fancy date night theater.
Yeah. I think he came. I think he came like he was going to a Cinemax, like AMC theater.
No, it was
again, laughing. Hamburglar, laughing with somebody that she thinks killed his 2 little girls and pregnant wife. And this is okay. This shows more deception that needs to be looked into. If they truly believe that he did that, I don't even see why they would want to sit across the table from him. I don't see why they would want to go a couple of years later and go up and do this and say that, oh yeah, they're just uncomfortable because a couple of things didn't wrap up nicely. So let's sit here and have this wonderful thing, like we're just old friends and we're going to laugh about all of this and how funny it is. Well, it isn't funny. And the fact that they sit there laughing and laughing is something that needs to be evaluated. Are they comfortable because he went ahead and made their job easy? Because right when things were starting to look like an investigation was going to happen, he said, I did it all. I did it, everything. Yep, just like you say. Okay, and yeah, just, you know what? Let's just not talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it. Let's just go, okay, yep, sure. You want to lock me up? Yeah, that's fine. Could it be that he was living that same kind of life as it was, that he felt so trapped, emotionally and otherwise? Because 2 things can be true at once. And all of the evidence pushes that she was the one having the affair. Well, it is true that he had an affair. They both had talked about separating, that he was sleeping downstairs. That is why we see the bed downstairs, and that is why NK refers to the bed that they did the naughty on, because Chris slept downstairs. Oh, I don't think it's true at all that he came upstairs and got on top of her and, did that, because they weren't sleeping together. There is a whole other story that is yet untold. When the interview happened in North Carolina for the Colorado News to put together, and the employees at Shanann's mom's workplace was talking about how Shanann and Chris were talking about their divorce? How does that line up with this perfect marriage? They were talking about how gross he is, how gross Chris is, and Shanann's getting a divorce. There are people out there who say that Shanann was driving around looking at other places to stay. It is my opinion that Shanann never had any intention of coming back to Colorado. And it is a moving theory that the baby that she was carrying was not the Chris that you think's baby. So if two things can be true at once, the idea that Christopher Watts needed to get rid of everybody because he was going to have 18 years of child support, not so much. That's why Shanann filmed the "Oops, we did it again" video in saying that she was pregnant a third time, because Christopher Watts knew when the last time he had had relations with his wife was not in line with when she conceived. That is why she was very elusive about the due date and why she had not yet had prenatal care. Why she paid for a private ultrasound, and that her first doctor's appointment was supposed to be for after the unthinkable. That in fact the discovery states in those interviewed that she had not seen a doctor for 2 years. That she stated that the MLM product that she was taking stopped her from needing to take over 20 medications for the lupus that was never confirmed, the lupus that there is no medical record of. When she was sick, it was because she was very stressed out because she was accused of taking money, of embezzlement. And no, I'm not talking about the lawsuit that was with the Fair Credit Act, blah, 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 blah. Not at all. Those that know. And it's not slanderous. It is her own words in which she has said and that others know her have said. And that does not in any way blame her or make what happened here justified in any way, shape, or form. It is that there is a bigger picture here, and that those that look like the narcissist are quite possibly not the narcissist at all. Is it true? Like those of us who have been abused in the way that we've been abused know that there's no point in trying to explain to anybody the kind of abuse that you've been through, because nobody's going to believe you. Is that what happened when Christopher Watts' mother stood up to Shanann that day? The Nutgate, the day after Napgate. Look at how Cindy Watts is vilified. There are people that come on my channel and tell me that Chris Watts' mother tried to kill her own grandchild. It's not true. It's not true at all. Shanann gave her a grocery list that she didn't follow, and she was mad about that. Does that make any of this that, it was warranted or worthwhile? No, stop being childish. These are adult conversations dealing with adult issues. And there were some adults that were standing by letting some very crappy adult actions occur. So much so that now how many years have passed and nobody can get through all of these lies? Because there was so much lies that followed so much greed, that the greedy liars are continuing to push a narrative that pays them. And I am not paid. For the shiners that come here and say that, I'm making so much money off of this, well, show me. Show me where that is. Because if I were to turn the narrative and go along with the script here and say that Christopher is this dumb monster that did all of this, and he was just a slime bag who decided he wanted a new wife to play house with, yeah, I could make money. But I don't, because I don't believe that. And I do believe that there is something here that needs to be identified. And again, hearing Tamburglar sit there and laugh a federal investigator sitting there laughing with somebody who she thinks did what she signed off to. That's not part of an interview. That's not an interviewing technique. This weird laughing and let's call it flirting. It's inappropriate. It's unprofessional. It's unacceptable. That's not okay. The questions that they had are because they're trying to get him to say as if he had the affairs with Trent Bolt. And that's what they're alluding to. And Trent Bolt was somebody who tried to interject himself into that, saying that Christopher had these homosexual affairs with him and all of this stuff. And that was what was on your salacious gossip channels. And that's where the interviewer here is alluding to and asking about one night stands. Chris Watts was naive when it came to women, in that he didn't have girlfriends throughout high school and whatnot. I was under the impression that Shanann was his first, but I was told recently that no, I'm wrong, that he had a girlfriend, and it was longer term, and I can't remember, was it that she didn't want kids or something like that, but I saw a picture of her. She's very beautiful, very blonde, beautiful face, beautiful. So it wasn't his first, I guess. I guess she was his second, but with Nicole being his third and being very sexually advanced, I think that Christopher had been in a marriage where he felt unloved for a long time, in that if you look at the pictures of Shanann at the vacations that she was using the mortgage money to pay for and not paying the mortgage and having her friends pick up the mail, so Christopher Watts was unaware of the fact that the mortgage wasn't being paid, and to the effect that, remember when the officer came and asked for the bank account to be checked to see if Shanann had accessed the money somewhere, they'd be able to figure out where she was. He didn't even know how to find his own banking account money. He didn't even know how to check how much money he had for the money that he was making, and he thought that he was providing for the family. The house was going to be foreclosed upon any day. That's why the HOA fees were not being paid. That's why the HOA hearing was going to happen the week after the unthinkable. That's why, in my opinion, Shanann took the girls to North Carolina, where she would have the protection of her parents to raise the girls. And she blew that taco stand. She left everything behind. When her plan A didn't work out, where she was going to stay in North Carolina for the other reasons I won't get into now, and she realized that she needed to grovel and inform Chris that he needed to take her back, things were already over. That's why his parents didn't want him to go back, and why they had him write the letter that said he would never harm his wife or his children. And if something happened, look at his wife. His parents did not want him to go back. They said, she's acting so out of control and outrageous that she's going to do something to you, and we fear for your life. He said, well, I'm fine. Ronnie brought that note to the police department that night. There's rumors now that say that, Ronnie took that to a lawyer and they said, that's premeditation. No. The letter said, if something happens to me or my children, look at my wife. That is implying that his wife would be very much alive to ask, and he wouldn't be. Ronnie brought that note. When he found out that the girls and Shanann were missing, he got on a flight and he brought that note straight to the investigators. Where were her parents? And then you've got the Tamburglar pulling this. Very unprofessional. Very unprofessional. This investigation, the discovery, all of it. It would have never looked good in a trial. It would have never been enough to convict him. Would he have been a Casey Anthony and out, and maybe my argument would be different, saying that he's guilty? Maybe so. maybe not. But right now, there's an incomplete investigation with a lot of holes in it, which is why a lot of people talk about it. And that more than one thing can be true at the same time. And looking at the bigger picture is very important. And having a difference of opinion and having civil discourse is healthy. Trying to silence another person by intimidation or force is not.
It's like you just watch the normal movie, but like you can like drink champagne and like have like get Jack and Coke inside the theater and just sit there and whatever. But like when she first saw me, she was like, I should probably just turn and talk to the bartender a little more. No, I'm not here to meet.
Once again, Chris uses information treatment to portray himself as a lovable, aw shucks underdog who's teased and tormented by a wily woman. Just this time it's Shanann. Of course, just like a story told by any calculating manipulator, it could be interpreted differently. For example, consider it this way, without the information treatment. Shanann spent hours finding a play for them to go to. She booked the tickets. She was excited about a big night out with Chris, so she spent hours in the mirror dolling herself up, picking out an outfit, and then he shows up like he just rolled out of bed. Now, with my information treatment, who is the deflated, belittled victim, and who is the one taking their partner for granted? This is the hallmark of calculating manipulators. Whether it's Chris Watts or Jada Pinkett Smith, they do not necessarily lie the way a big, bold, psychopathic liar lies. Instead, they distort the truth by what they highlight, like Chris did here with Shanann belittling him and humiliating him by flirting with the bartender, and what they decide to minimize, like him minimizing the fact that he put little to no effort into the date, which probably belittled and humiliated Shanann.
More than one thing can be true again, in that Shanann spent a couple of hours each morning getting herself ready. That meant that the girls were still locked in their bedroom and had the routine of 15 hours behind closed doors so that she could spend that much time on herself. That is the act of a narcissist. That does not make anything justified or otherwise. She was narcissistic, had narcissistic propensities over and again. And that is not anything that anybody looking at this could honestly dispute. Is there any crime in spending time making yourself look beautiful? No, but that was of paramount importance to her. Her looks were absolutely important. She did not go out without her face on. And yes, in the end, when she was sick because of the other things that have all happened in those last couple of weeks, and she looked pitiful, that is a whole different thing, because people will say, oh, well, look at her there. Well, look at all of the MLM things. Now, the MLM things, while she was traveling with another man and blatantly with another man in the arms of another man, allowing all of the inferences of that other man being the father of Cece and whatnot, those videos are there. Shanann did flirt. She did absolutely use her womanly wiles to get what she wanted. She was a woman in sales from the age of 15 when she started doing Amway with her dad. She lived that dirty South lifestyle. She was working in a man's world. She made that money, in that she had that personality that did that. Christopher Watts did not. When I go out with my husband, and been married for 24 years, if I feel like doing myself up and I put on an outfit and whatnot, that is for me in the way that I would feel comfortable in thinking that pictures are going to be taken or whatever. And I want my husband to feel comfortable. It's not to me of what are you wearing and showing up. I want him to be comfortable. And that is, a mature marriage in that. And so if we say that, okay, they were dating, it was the same for that. If I took a while to get myself ready or whatever, that's because I'm doing that for myself. You should never, dress for somebody else. There were a lot of different things going on in that marriage. And if we don't look at it as Chris being a psychopathic, manipulative liar, and we look at he's telling the truth, what does that do? Is that okay?
And of course, the tone they use when they tell the story. And we saw Nicole Kessinger do a lot of this, where they say verbatim what they said, but they use a very different tone than they likely used in real life. This is why we must be very careful about jumping to conclusions regarding Shanann, because she's not around to defend herself or tell her side of the story. Everything we know about her as a wife is filtered through Chris.
It's not. The videos were taken en masse by Shanann. She was ahead of her time in being a social media presence. She would have been one of those TikTok moms if it would have progressed. We have more of the ability to analyze behavior in a case than probably any other case before, because of the massive amount of social media that she put herself, her actions, and the way that she was parenting or not parenting up for whatever reason she did. You could say that she was doing it to sell the MLM stuff, but as the numbers come out and they were facing a second bankruptcy, and I should not say they because I've been told before, not they, her, a second bankruptcy with the house going into foreclosure and him not even knowing about it, there were problems. There were big problems. And those are left there. And it does not mean that I am bashing or anybody is bashing her. There are people that can't defend themselves, and those are those girls. Those girls were not able to defend themselves, but I'm able to defend what was going on now in their honor. And quite frankly, Christopher Watts is not in a position to defend the actions in which he is being accused right now and always. And so if we are looking at the behavior regarding when they were alive, then it is fair to evaluate such behavior. And that does not make it wrong. That is something that is done in every case. In forensic evaluations are always done, and psychological evaluations, if the person is no longer alive and the case is going, the information that you have at hand is there. And just because there's this group of people that is standing behind the people who are making a lot of money right now on a narrative that is not proven in truth, that is proven in monetary gain, that are saying that anything said about Shanann is wrong and bashing the dead, that does not mean that that is true. More than one thing can be true at once, and the situation is absurd in that in this case only are there this group of people doing this, and it is because this case has always been rooted in greed and lies. In lies and greed were a part of her life and continue to be afterwards by those espousing to be acting as her agent. And as long as that money train is at the precipice of everything that is done, then the truth and the facts will never be evaluated. And all people should have the opportunity to see the truth and defend themselves. That is correct. But we don't have that opportunity with Shanann. And it does not mean that she was a bad person. If she was a narcissist, there are narcissists all over. If she was having an affair, well, lots of people have affairs. But to say that he basically deserves to be where he's at because he was having an affair, well, she was having an affair too. And is it even an affair when they both had agreed that they were separating and they were heading for divorce? Is it an affair, or were they both moving on? There are so many facets of this case, and one movement espousing from financial gain to shut other people down and take away their ability to speak on the truth is not right. And those are the questions that need to be asked. Always follow the money. When you are being told that you're bashing the dead, that you're doing this and blah, 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 follow that money. Follow that money and go right to where it's going. And it's easy to see. And I can give you a link.
Whose goal is to be perceived as a victim. He would love nothing more than the general public to think that Shanann pushed him over the edge by belittling and humiliating him.
Then why has he never said that once? Why has he not tried to defend himself in that way at all, ever? Why is he willing to say, all right, okay, I did it. Yep, sure. Yep, I did that too. Any other crimes that I can take responsibility for that you guys all have? Oh, yeah. Well, you know what, Tamburglar, can I help you with your caseload? I'll admit to that too so that I can just go and just leave me alone in a corner for the rest of my life. I'll never bother anybody again. He's not defending himself. He's not saying that Shanann did it. In fact, when asked about people posing the theory that I am, he denies it. He says, nope. Nope, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. But we know that he has stated otherwise in other ways in which he symbolizes things. Listen to my episode on Homer and Gomer and you'll understand it. But for those he doesn't trust, he's not going to say anything. He's going to just go along and say, yep, because he doesn't want the confrontation. He is fearful of confrontation.
Or that Nicole Kessinger manipulated him into killing his family. And since I've mentioned Shanann, and I'm aware there's many theories out there about how she wasn't the perfect partner and she might have even been sadistic, I'll just reiterate what I said in the DD forum back in March. Shanann Watts was a victim in this tragic event, not the perpetrator, and I am opposed to contributing to Chris's attempts to garner sympathy by assigning even one iota of blame to her without undeniable proof. As I often emphasize in my videos, psychopaths are highly skilled at making themselves appear as the victim, and that is what I think is going on, and I called it back then before I'd even analyzed one word from Chris. There are no sacred cows on.
But that in therein is the problem, in that analyzing it without hearing Chris's words is going by the narrative, and the narrative is a very highly profitable narrative, in that from day one, where People magazine and everybody put this picture perfect family up, literally picture perfect, has been referred to as such, as this picture perfect family. That, you know what, Shanann just didn't make a sandwich right one day, and so he found somebody who could make a sandwich better, and he took out all of them. She just went to go and visit those grandparents. She was the perfect wife, beautiful in every way. Perfect, beautiful home. And he decided that he was just going to go and be a big dirty pig while she was gone, and was like, you know what? I like my dirty pig ways, and I'm going to make sure that I can have my dirty pig ways and that you're out of here. Nah, not how it happened, but that's how it sells headlines. Those headlines are sold on that patriarchal belief that if you don't behave well enough as the little lady, you could be taken out by that man at any time. You just better be good, because that man can take you out. If you look at how deep this goes, it's scary. And I thought that we had moved further in society than to perpetuate that. Apparently we haven't. And we cannot, with some of the other family annihilators, absolutely, they fit this. We don't need to hear anything they say. They're womanizing, they're just everything that would fit this profile. Christopher Watts does not fit this profile. Something ain't right. There are too many questions. And Weld County dropped the ball. If the headline was, couple in the midst of an ugly divorce, on the brink of foreclosure, facing bankruptcy for a second time, has the mother and 2 children missing. Would that sell headlines? Would that have had everybody in the country on pause? No. It has to be picture perfect to sell headlines. And the truth must be black and white to sell those headlines. But if we don't want to sell the headlines and we want to get to the truth, we must look between the black and the white. And that is where the gray is. And this is a very gray situation that requires you to use your gray matter and figure it out. Look at the big picture. Look at how many different things were going on at once. Who has the problematic behavior, deceptive behavior, long-term and proven? Who doesn't? And how does that one take all of the blame for all of it? And not want to even attempt to blame or explain himself? Just like, all right, tell me where to go. All right, I'll just go rot in this little hole here. Would you like me to do solitary confinement too? I mean, when we're saying that he's that, person, I don't think it's manipulative. I think that he's just so afraid of confrontation that he can't even begin to know how to emote to defend himself. That right now he finds comfort in the Lord and the Bible, and that is his safe space. And he speaks in code in the Bible. And when he referred to his wife as Gomer, there's great symbolism in it. Look it up.
On my channel, as everyone knows, but I do think we can let Shanann rest in peace.
Don't just use the internet, unleash it with ultra-fast speeds. And with Price for Life...
She first saw him and she was like, I should probably just turn and...
To rest in peace, as we agree that Shanann should be resting in peace, I have no doubt that she's resting in peace. In heaven, I have no doubt that whatever her behaviors in life were as a result of something deeper. That nothing that she did warranted what happened. But the problem is that those girls didn't deserve what was happening to them either. That's where we need to find the truth, because only in truth can closure and comfort ever occur. That, well, the grandparents and those who loved those little girls and their mother need to get used to the fact that money is not going to bring them closer to understanding the truth and the facts and closure. Full closure cannot happen, but sitting there and acting like victims to make more and more money on false narratives only creates more pain. And in so doing, if that theory is there as to not talk about Shanann, as to let her rest in peace, you cannot evaluate what truly happened without looking at her behaviors in life. Her own parents should be asking the questions that we are. Her own parents left their homes and went and lived with her for 16 months. And when her mother was leaving, because she had to go back to her life, she asked the very person who made the emergency calls to be a spy for her. That she had to go back and she didn't feel safe leaving Shanann. That she needed somebody to report back on what was happening with Shanann each day. To spy on her. And N.A. said no. N.A. was Shanann's mom's friend. She wasn't Shanann's friend. N.A. said no. And Shanann's mom said, I don't feel comfortable. Please, please, please. And ultimately she agreed. And N.A. and Shanann went on their little vacations together. But N.A. was much more her caretaker than her friend. And reporting back to her mother. And that's why that call was made that morning to her mother. And her mother made the urgent calls and said, hey, say she's diabetic. Well, she wasn't diabetic. She had not been to a doctor in over 2 years, and she had not yet been to a doctor for the whole pregnancy. She was not diabetic. But her mom said to say diabetic so that gets the police more involved and seeing it as a bigger call than what it was. And if we look at some of the behavior in that, we see that there's a lot of lies that were accepted norms. And those lies are not healthy to continue to let be there. We need to say what did her parents see that was problematic in why they needed to go and stay for 16 months. We could play the devil's advocate here, and we could say that they thought that Christopher was a domestic abuser and they were there to make sure that Shanann was safe. But we don't hear those things coming from them, do we? I don't think for a second that if Shanann's parents thought that Chris was capable of this, that they would have ever left her alone with him. They would have brought her back to North Carolina. They wouldn't have just left. Why did they go out and stay for 16 months? That's not something that people do. Shanann only had the 2 kids. It's not like she had a whole gaggle of them. Speaking of as a mom with 6 kids and no help, so it's not like you have your parents just stop everything and move in. They knew that something was going on that wasn't right. What was that? Why was that? All of these things have to be considered before we just say that Chris is just a dumb, manipulative psychopath. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit.
Talk to the bartender a little more. No, I'm not here to be. But yeah, like I was like persistent trying to pursue something. I liked her, and even on our first day, like I couldn't even eat anything really. I was just like,
just so nervous.
Yeah, really. Yeah, she was just like chowing down. And she was like, "Hey, like a bird." I'm like, "It's not like this." And she talked to my parents like months later. She was like, "This guy just never ate." He's like, "This guy eats like a trash disposal." Trash disposal. I was like, "No."
There we go. He's saying that he was afraid to eat on the first date. I know what that's like. To me, eating with somebody for the first time, it's very intimidating. It's a very intimate act. And here Shanann's over there just chowing down. Weren't we supposed to believe in this story here that she was this sick person who was going through an illness as opposed to the other facts? I mean, if we go to who's the psychopath in that situation, the person not at all uncomfortable in a first date, chowing down, not being uncomfortable. There are 2 sides here.
No, not around me. I was like, well, I was nervous. I was just like, I was always like shaking and everything. But yeah, I was always pursuing her, and then just like finally, I grew onto her. Like I would always like with her medications and stuff, I would always she had like 8 bottles of medication, so I would always get like her day and nights and kind of like put them all in that little flip open and go box, all that kind of stuff, and I would always be around her. I even went to her colonoscopy, and she said after that she knew that was like a kind of a keeper. It's like who goes to a colonoscopy after 3 months with somebody? Right.
That's a little soon.
But she asked if she needed a ride. I'm like, yeah. She's like, you want to go across my colonoscopy with me? I'm like, sure, why not? Like, I even sat with her while she drank that nasty stuff all day. Yeah.
Oh. Or she's in the bathroom all day.
Yeah. Like clear stuff that doesn't really taste clear. Yeah. But yeah, it was. I mean, it felt like it was a great relationship. Everything was great.
Now you're talking about with Kissinger?
No, with Thomas and like the first year, my parents never. I don't know. My mom was always kind of hesitant.
What?
I was the baby, I guess. I Because I never had a girlfriend in high school, so it's kind of like she never like really saw me like.
Oh, interesting. So she's kind of watching her baby walk out a little bit.
Yeah, because now I turned 18, I graduated, I never moved back.
Okay.
At home, so my sister moved back and forth all the time. So
how old were you when you met Shanann?
I was 25. I was 20 then, so.
Okay.
Based on the way Chris was telling the stories earlier, I would not have guessed that he was 25 when he met Shanann. And once again, it's the power of information treatment. He paints himself as this shy, virginal, henpecked little boyfriend who's too nervous to eat on the first date and is shuffling his demanding girlfriend around to appointments. And besides the manipulation of painting himself as this lovable aw shucks victim, we're also seeing glimmers of narcissism and psychopathy as far as my amateur assessment goes. For example, when it came to Shanann's illness, he's the victim. Well, I had to sit there when she was drinking that disgusting clear stuff. Poor little Chris. How many words does he spare lamenting what Shanann was going through or empathizing with her being sick and having to be shuttled around? Not one. In other words, all of this is spoken like a true calculating manipulator, if not a psychopath. And when I hit play, listen closely, because when...
And conversely, as you were unaware of the fact that he was 25 when he met her, knowing the bigger picture, he was 25 when he met her. Now, she was a more sophisticated woman. She had been married and divorced. Her marriage ended in that her attorney husband, military attorney husband, had a problem with her behavior and asked her to go to marriage counseling, and her answer to that was not coming home at night anymore. Now, she came with a suitcase of 50 grand and had a beautiful home made exactly like her boss's, and shortly thereafter she was accused of this amount of missing money, about the same amount. She was accused of embezzlement. She did not have her job anymore. These are true. These are longer and bigger parts of the story. And if you don't know them, then that's not going to make sense. Now, looking at her there, you see her very vibrant. You see her having the extra weight on. The illness came when she was going through the most stressful period of her life, where she was being accused of and accused. There is no prosecution. There was no charges filed, nothing like that. But it is rumored that that is why she was no longer working at the Dirty South, which was this kind of fast and loose rap kind of group. If look up the video of the Dirty South and you'll see, and that's what she was working with. She was working with these fast vehicles, and she had a beautiful vehicle to drive while she worked there, a nice big old shiny Suburban with nice wheels, and that Dirty South lifestyle where, you know, it's the stereos, the extras, all the stuff that goes with cars. And so she's a woman working in that automobile kind of, I don't know how to explain it other than to just look at the video of that Dirty South lifestyle. So she had worked in that, and then everything came crashing down in her life. She didn't have a job, and she was losing her big, beautiful house and everything. And she most likely felt the physical symptoms of stress. When you all of a sudden have your whole world ripped out from under you, you're accused of criminal actions and other things that she was accused of that time. Then yeah, she was going to all of these doctors and nothing was coming out. And it was said that she was going to be tested for lupus, and she had been in lupus support groups. There's nothing corroborating that she had lupus, and most people who know anything about lupus know that you cannot be in the sun. So the fact that she was in the sun and in the bikini and living the lifestyle and having the healthy pregnancies that she did, there's a lot there showing that she did not in fact have the lupus. Now, the medication that she had, that was a steady stream of oxycodone. Oxycodone that did not then match up to having a doctor, if she had not seen a doctor for 2 years, but of course always had that steady supply of oxycodone. So one can infer that there were some other issues going on. That is not to trash anybody. That is not to bash anybody. That is to say that the behavior going on was dysfunctional at best. Now, she needed a driver to have a colonoscopy because she was feeling sick. Okay? Having somebody in her life that would drive her would be great. As it is stated that her and her brother were inseparable, whatever. She was living in the same town as her parents and her brother and everything. Why couldn't one of them have been with her for the colonoscopy prep? There was obviously nobody there in her life that was supporting her other than this new boyfriend. So that brings in a lot of the questions that happen right now with a lot of the ongoing baloney. She had nobody other than Chris. And to ask somebody, especially some of your dating, to be there for you emptying the inside of your colon out, letting it come out and washing it out. Essentially what happens during a colonoscopy prep. For her to ask her new boyfriend to do this, well, yeah, as she said, he's a keeper when he decided to be there. And he wasn't accustomed to anything like that, of him being uncomfortable to eat with her for the first time. And then, having to hear the noises that come from, shitting your brains out for a colonoscopy prep. I'm sure the poor man was a little bit traumatized because if you haven't heard that and here they're going through this together, well then yeah, he's like, well, I guess we're together now. There's no secrets. I take it as that. I don't take it as nefarious or him being like, oh God, I had to do this. He was not used to that. He's a 25-year-old man that hadn't been married and had, one girlfriend before, had certainly not had a woman who was divorced and, confident and going through a colonoscopy prep with him. That kind of put their relationship on fast mode. Now from there, there were fights with his parents and blah, 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 blah that were going on to the effect that she didn't let his parents go to the wedding. Her second wedding, his first and only. And again, there are so many bigger moving parts that unless you know this, you can't conceptualize this. And that's where a trial really would have brought all of these contradictory inferences into light, which we're doing now. And it's not anything personal. We are seeing things in different ways, and it's civil discourse. It's from years of me researching and you researching in other ways. It does not mean that I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me. It means that there's a lot going on here. And when they did move, she did go and live under the radar with a new name and did not want to really have anything to do with her old lifestyle, and started anew, living under the radar, starting a new life with a new last name. That's what she needed to do. And that's what she did. She reinvented herself because she was leaving the stress and the chaos that was North Carolina behind.
And Chris gets pressed about never having a girlfriend before, as he claims here. He actually changes his story, which is just a nice little confirmation that he's being fast and loose with the facts.
Or he's telling the truth.
So no serious girlfriends before that?
Nothing more than like 6 months or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some girls here and there, but just nothing more than like, the last girlfriend I had before she was just actually got divorced, and I should never did that, but it was more of like I was kind of like helping her get through her divorce. It seemed like she went on somebody else. I'm like, oh, nice to know.
You're the rebound guy?
The rebound guy.
Rebound guy.
But, you know, how it goes.
Would you say that in your relationships with women, it seems to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it seems to me like you're attracted to maybe a more dominant personality?
It seemed like it because I'm more of the just reserved. I mean, I just kind of like go with the flow type.
Yeah.
And like, Shan usually made all the decisions, it seemed like, so.
I get that. I'm saying, yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I don't think that's right with you, but.
So then, and I know it's hard to keep bouncing back and forth, but, and one of the reasons we're here is we just keep telling ourselves, Chris just does not fit the mold. Chris does not.
No.
I guess it just blows us away what happened, right? And so we will do a little bit of bouncing back and forth, but that's really just to get to know you a little bit better. We never really got that chance to be.
Pretty much twice.
Yeah.
Met you once.
Yeah.
Probably like 3 or 4 times, probably.
So then do you call her Nikki or Nicole?
I would call her Nikki.
Okay.
I know. There's so many Nikki and Nicoles in this.
Right.
I got confused.
So we'll call her Nikki. Okay. So then with Nikki, was it different?
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to
Now-
make money on Amazon is not with physical.
What you
It
were
just
just
seemed
saying
like
there
I was more.
was a commercial for the MLM the MLM program in which she was selling, and she's giving the kids bites of that MLM product. I don't believe that was the product that was marketed for children. I believe that is not for children, but I'm going to leave that there.
Hand control, it seemed like, and that never happened. Like, she actually like asked me like my opinion on a lot of things, just like what I wanted to do, and just kind of like, okay.
That was new, wasn't it?
Very new.
It's fascinating to me.
Once again, everything Chris is saying could very likely be true. Shanann could have been the leader in their relationship and even domineering at times. But Chris's presentation of the events, down to his shaky, feeble voice as he recounts the relationship, appears calculated to give the impression of a victim. And since so much of this video revolves around information treatment, I'll just read you the relevant card from my deception deck. The card is Spotting Common Lies, and it is in the Concepts suit. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Testimony oath. When evaluating statements for deception, consider the 3 components of the testimony oath. 1. Commission. This involves bold-faced lies of commission, where an individual outright contradicts the oath's pledge to tell the truth through direct falsehoods. In other words, bold liars. 2. Omission. Here, lies of omissions occur. The subject tells part of the truth, but intentionally omits incriminating, crucial information, not adhering to the whole truth. And this is the most common type of lie. And 3rd, distortion. The final method of lying involves information treatment. The truth is presented is warped with additional language, such as exclusion qualifiers or a passive tone, deviating from nothing but the truth. And this is the difference between bold liars who lie by commission, average liars who lie by omission, and then calculating liars who lie with information treatment. In other words, they're not technically lying. And that's what I believe we have with Chris a lot of the time here. So when I hit play, pay attention to how Chris frames his dates with Nicole. The picture he paints is if he's a little boy sneaking away with her and discovering a new world of opportunities. He can go camping with her or watch a drag race, things he's always wanted to do. Of course, nothing was preventing him from doing any of these things this entire time. And it certainly wasn't Shanann. He met her when he was 25 years old And she couldn't even prevent him from sleeping over at Nicole's house multiple nights during their courtship. In other words, if you have a manipulator in your own life, they probably manipulate you the same way Chris is attempting to manipulate his audience by painting.
Again, two things can be true. So while Shanann is out there on these MLM trips that were funded by Chris Watts working for what he thought was money going towards the mortgage, was not going towards the mortgage or the HOA or anything else. They were going for her to buy the MLM product, in which she said then that she qualified for these free vacations and the vehicle. Chris Watts was unaware of the bank account or anything going on in his life. He knew that he was going to work to what he thought was providing, and that money was being taken out. Now, his wife, Shanann, was very obvious about being with another man in these videos, but saying something else and making sure that Christopher Watts had a little list to stick to and what could be fed to the girls, what the girls could do and whatnot, and that all of the sleep training and food training, etc., in which she commanded would be done, was done, and he had to prove that. Is that a quality of life? Is that him being the manipulator, or is that somebody else being the manipulator? So while she's gone, was he supposed to continue a life of being alone and subjected to lists while she's going off and having all of this fun at his expense, literally and figuratively? Is he this monster or not? And at some point, he had to have wanted something more. And when he was talking with Nicole, they were talking about the bunk beds. They were talking about the future. They were not having these conversations. At some point, it's Occam's razor that it is what it is, that Christopher Watts is just telling the truth in the way that it was, in the way that he saw it. And there's not anything nefarious in it. He was not doing the manipulating. He was not regularly looking at his wife saying these things. He was not the one going out of town with another woman. He was not the one taking money from the family and lying. He was not the one doing those things.
Themselves in a very different light without telling any actual lies.
It just seemed like I was more in control, it seemed like, and that never happened.
In that he wanted to go camping and he wanted to have fun and whatnot. Colorado is the ultimate outdoor playground. Why weren't those things being done? As Shanann was so clear to film everything that was being done, there wasn't any time where the family was going camping, having fun, going to parks, going places. While it was sometimes talked about, the corroborating evidence was not there. Well, Shanann was going out of town several times in a month, sometimes several times in a week. Chris and the girls had to stay behind with a strict schedule. So while he's saying these things that he wished that he could do, he probably was wishing he could do it. There was no money left for him to do anything because of what Shanann had done with the money and the way that the money was being used for her vacations.
She actually asked me my opinion on a lot of things, just what I wanted to do, and just kind of okay.
That was new, wasn't it?
Very new.
It's fascinating to me. And so did it feel more like an equal partnership, or?
It seemed like it.
Yeah. Okay. So then when it was date night, would you guys talk about it? Would you ask to go somewhere, or would she say, I want to go somewhere? Or was it two things?
The first time we went out, it was to a movie over at the Orchard, about the 144th over there. And I asked her, hey, you want to go see this movie? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. And we got there, it was sold out. And, normally I'd probably just have, just wait 2 hours, just go home. But now she just wanted to walk around and just talk. I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
So that was different. And, I think she wanted to go to the car museum, Shelby Museum in Boulder. I'd never been there. And
That's right up your alley.
I was just like, that was awesome just to walk around cars for like an hour or so. And then, drag race in Vandermeer.
Okay.
I haven't been to a drag race since 2008. That was in Charlotte.
Okay.
Like that was the drag strip over there. That's like the NHRA, the Top Fuel, fun car stuff. Like me and my dad used to grow up. Go there like all the time. And then went to camping in Sand Dunes National Park, and I'd never been camping. I always wanted to do it. Thought it was she'd done it like countless times.
Oh, really? Okay. She's outdoorsy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she.
Chris loved mechanics and all things being a mechanic. It is sad, and there is implication in there that Shanann did not believe that having a mechanic for a husband was in line with what she wanted, and so it is rumored that she had him say that he had an injury to get money for their impending overwhelming debt and claim carpal tunnel syndrome and have him get a different job. I think that taking a man's passion from him is the only thing he ever wanted to do was work on cars, look at cars, be a part of NASCAR. He wanted to work on NASCAR cars. So to look at the bigger picture, Shanann took everything that he wanted, everything that he liked, and made him into who she needed him to be to fit the mold in which suited her. That does not mean that what happened is warranted. It does mean that Christopher was living a life that was for her and not for him. And when somebody came along and said something like, "What do you want to do?" That's something very pivotal for a person who has lived without their needs and wants known for a very long time. That to go to a car museum while he had lived in that city and not been able to do so, because that was not anything that Shanann would do, meant a lot. It does not make him a psychopathic, manipulative liar. He doesn't fit the mold. Does it mean that he didn't do it? I don't know. I do know that there is more to the story.
Every time she needed to clear her head, she'd just go by herself. Just go somewhere else.
But she's a completely new type of person and relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What were you thinking this whole time?
In the back of my head, I was telling myself, "What are you doing?" Every time, I'd open up my phone, I could see pictures of my wife and my kids, and just what am I doing? And then every time I was with her, it seemed like it didn't think. It seemed like it was like a blinder that was on my face.
Oh.
And it was every time I look back on it, I have pictures of my wife and kids and myself. And every night, or every morning, every night, I just, talk to them, say I have this book I used to read for CC, and I remember that book, so I read that to them every night. And there's some scripture and stuff that I read to them, so just try to think back. I wish this never happened. I wish that blinder went on my head, went in my eyes, that would have seen what was going on.
Once again, Chris cannot take responsibility for anything he did. He blames everything he did on these blinders, and I wish I didn't have these blinders. It's not my fault. So now we're getting into the details of Chris's relationship with Nicole. And remember, if Nicole was involved in the planning, execution, or cover-up of the murders, this is where we might get some clues about that, especially if we detect for the first time so far in this interview that he's attempting to minimize her involvement in any stage of the murders. since he's done the opposite so far across this entire interview, blaming everyone but himself for everything, down to the affair, the courtship, and even the little blinders on his head. If you've not seen my analysis of Nicole, I have plenty of questions about her too. They're on your screen now. I recommend watching them next. And if you want to continue this series, let's get this video to 50,000 views. Until next time, stay true.
And all people coming together with their own backgrounds, opinions, education, and insight is what is going to bring us all closer to the truth. And big eyes need to be on who it is that is trying to silence us the most. Again, I am not doing anything illegal. I am not going to end up in court for anything that I have said. I have received major threats, especially this week, of me being sued and other things in that gives reasoning to the other channels that have been taken down. And when there are channels like mine that do not speak to the narrative, that the comment sections have to be turned off, and that discussion within the community is ceased. I keep my comments up. I allow everybody the opportunity to come into my community once. And if you seem like you're going to mesh, and we have a difference of opinion, but it's not going to make you insult me or insult my friends. I don't like to call subscribers. I like to say friends. And in my community, I've worked hard to build my community. And I like to let everybody feel like they belong, that if they're questioning what is said, that's enough to be here and listen. And that's all I ask. But if you insult one of my friends, a sub, that's it. You're gone. If you want to say something horrible to me once, wonderful. That my block list is bigger than my sub list. It's not important to me to have a whole channel based on hate. I don't build anything true to my my nature and conviction in that way. So if I'm a small channel because I speak to what I believe is the truth, then that's fine. I'm a small channel. And as you all know, I am currently not monetized. If you feel so inclined, my Cash App is linked on the back page. Cash App for Tabitha Jane 13. I will always appreciate you buying the coffee. And thank you for listening. And the Deception Detective has great insight. I like listening to how he thinks and how he's done other things. And I believe that he has great skills, and I love that he's open to hearing more information, and stepping into the Watts case is a huge learning curve. And it takes a lot of looking at both sides. It takes a lot of careful observation of the behavior and seeing what is actually happening as opposed to what you are being told is happening. That is the juxtaposition of everything, is to look at what is actually happening. Turn off the volume if you need to. Look at the videos in which Shanann has posted. Look at what is really going on. Look at what you would think was going on there if somebody was not telling you that what you are seeing is something different. And you will begin to see the truth for what it is. And in that note, I will close. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you all soon.